Welcome to this lesson. We are looking at Form 2 chemistry under the effects of an electric current on substances. And the first question we have reads, define the following terms as used in this topic. And the first term we have is an electrolyte. An electrolyte is a substance which, when in molten form or solution form, conducts electricity and gets decomposed by it. The second term we have is electrolysis. And electrolysis is a process of decomposing an electrolyte by using electricity. And therefore we can say is the decomposition of an electrolyte by using an electric current, or simply electricity. Roman 3, we have an electrode. An electrode is simply a solid conductor. Remember, under this topic we have two electrodes, namely the anode and the cathode, and we are supposed to define what an anode means. And an anode is simply an electrode where oxidation process takes place. We are going to look at how oxidation takes place at the anode, and the cathode is also an electrode where reduction takes place. Having defined those 5 terms, we can now move down to part B and look at the application part of this topic. And the question we have reads, the figure below shows an experiment to investigate electrical conductivity of lead-2 bromide. In this case, lead-2 bromide is used as an electrolyte. Use it to answer the questions that follow. We have our setup here, and the setup we have contains different components. One is the bulb. We have the switch. These are the connecting wires. This is the source of power. We can call it the battery. And also the 2 electrodes. Sometimes you can be told to label the electrodes. This longer terminal here represents a positive, and the shorter one represents the negative. And in this case, the negative is the cathode, and therefore this electrode here becomes the cathode. And the longer terminal is positive. That means this electrode here is known as the anode in this case. So the first part of the question under the diagram. On the diagram, show the flow of electrons. Remember, electrons or the current will flow from the positive to negative, and therefore this will be the direction of flow of the current. This is the flow of electrons. Next, part B, what was omitted in the diagram? Remember, lead-2 bromide is an ionic compound, and ionic compounds do not conduct electricity in solid state, and therefore it must be molten. and therefore what is missing here is the source of heat. The heat is required to melt lead-2-bromide so that it can exist as ions. We move down to the questions part C. State and explain the observations made at each electrode at the end of the experiment. Remember, lead-2-bromide contains lead-2 ions and also bromide ions. Lead-2 ions being positively charged will move to the cathode, which is negative, and bromide ions being negatively charged will move to the anode, which is positive. In this case, lead metal will be discharged at the cathode, while bromine gas will be formed at the anode. So see, we are supposed to state and explain the observations made at each electrode. We can begin with the anode. Where bromine gas is going to be formed, and therefore the observations at the anode is that red-brown fumes of bromine vapor are formed. Then we have the cathode where lead metal is going to be formed, and at the cathode we will see the gray beads of lead metal. Next, which is part D, using equations illustrate the observations made at the electrodes. And again we are going to begin with the anode, and at the anode is where we are going to have bromide ions migrating to, and the bromide ions will migrate to the anode where they are going to lose electrons to form bromine gas, and bromine gas has 2 bromide atoms, and therefore we need 2 bromide atoms to form 1 mole of bromine gas, and therefore they will lose a maximum of 2 electrons. That is what is happening at the anode. We also need to look at what happens at the cathode. Remember, lead ions will move to the cathode where they gain 2 electrons to form a gray solid of lead metal. The last part of this question. This experiment is carried out in a fume chamber. We are supposed to give a reason why. Remember, bromine gas is formed, which is poisonous, and therefore the reason why we need to do it in a fume chamber is because bromine is a poisonous gas. Thank you for watching and welcome to this channel. And in case you are watching this for the first time, kindly take 1 second and click the subscribe button so that anytime we produce a video like this, you will automatically be given a notification.